Just check that we're live. Yeah. Should be live now. Just starting both streams up. So we're on YouTube and we're live on Facebook. Hello and welcome to Colin Bradley Artcast. I'm Stephen Bradley.
And I'm Colin Bradley.
How you doing, Dad?
Very well, Steve, thank you. Lovely to see you and the family a couple of days ago.
It was lovely. Thank you for coming up to see us.
It was lovely. We wouldn't have missed it for the world. So it was lovely to see the children. By God, they're growing fast, aren't they? I mean, we don't see them as much as we'd like to, but usually it's photographs or videos and so on. But it's such a pleasure. Children are so great. I mean, they make our lives, don't they?
Yeah. Well, you get the best of both worlds in that you get to spend time with them, and then you've done your time. you've done your innings. You've been parents full time, and now you get to be grandparents part time.
Yes, it is, and it's obviously having children and watching them grow up is a wonderful thing, but there's something rather special about being a grandparent, because you get all the joy and the pleasure of seeing them without all the bother, because my goodness, it's tough, as you know.
Yeah. No, it's lovely. No, thanks for coming. It was really lovely to have you up. So coincidentally then, because you came up on Friday, we didn't record on Friday. So we're recording late on this Sunday night. So I hope everyone's well. And if you're able to tune in live, welcome. Thanks for joining us. As always, if you have any questions or anything while we're recording, feel free to post them in the comments. I'll try and catch them as best I can and see if we can answer them on the show live whilst we're chatting. But this week, I know we're going to touch base on this new picture that we've been talking about, that you've been working on, and you've made a bit more progress on it this week, Dad.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I have, and I've gone a bit further than we're going to see tonight as well. And I've got to tell you, it's looking quite spectacular. I'm thoroughly enjoying myself. And next week, you'll see it almost finished. Not quite, because I'll have a little bit left, but almost. And,
let's see if I can show where we were at last week. This was last week's picture.
Mm-hmm.
So we got a little bit of a before and after going on here. So you can see that you've been doing a wash on the roofs. You can see that quite clearly in some of the detail that you've been adding in pastel.
Well, the interesting thing here is we were talking about the thatch last week, weren't we? And I was quite pleased with the way it was gone, but there was those two that weren't finished. Well, now that they have been finished, and I think you'll see quite a change, because looking at that one, certainly the one nearest to you on the left, where it's just a plain dull browny blob, isn't it? Really, there's nothing very much in it. But if you look at it, you see that was just watercolor on there, and you can see that we've got slight variations, and that's deliberate, because once you do a wash like that, you want to make the kind of base really representative of not too plain. It's so easy just to put the wash on or leave it. But what I wanted to do there was to set the scene, really, for me, when it comes to doing the pastel. And as I say, here you're going to see quite a difference. And also the cottages as well. Those cottages in the distance there. I'm particularly pleased with them, and I think you'll see that I've finished them. I'm sure you're going to see those finished.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Let's see if this works. Just show you. There you go. What difference?
Yes, it's interesting. What's interesting, I think, about this is when you're looking at those cottages, the three immediately in front of the church, you see they're angled, aren't they? And look at the angle of those. Now, what's happening, of course, is as you're going over that bridge where there's water running underneath it, you're then going uphill to the church. And
Yeah.
that, you see what I mean? So when you're representing something like this, which was an actual and is an actual place, you've got to represent it truly. So, of course, the angle, the cottage on the far end of that, next to the church, is a different perspective, really, to the
Mm.
ones, the two in the middle. And I think this is fascinating to see how when you can do a painting, you can actually reproduce that kind of effect.
Mm.
And I was particularly pleased with the way they came up. It took a bit of work, though. That's not that easy. You have to bear that in mind. And of course, I have to bear in mind the fact that we have a hill that's there.
Mm.
And
But see, it looks like there's so much detail, like, and you've added an incredible amount of detail in pastel here. How
oh, yeah,
much of it is how much, if you were to wipe away the pastel magically, what would be left of the watercolor?
very little, in fact. There's not much representation there at all of watercolor. When I've done watercolor work, I can make it look more or less like that, and I can swing the brain brush, as you've seen many of my watercolors, but you can't kind of get that same texture that you can get when you use the two together.
Mm.
Pastel mat also helps a lot. There's good and bad parts of that. I did mention last week that I felt that you'd find that probably if you were doing a watercolor paper as a base, it might be better than using pastel mat. But I've got mixed feelings about it now. Now I've used a pastel mat because although it is harder work, you do get a kind of better feel to it. And if you look at that thatch, it really looks as though you could put your hands through the straw, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So this is the thing. Let's look at this, hone in on the one that wasn't done, that is now done. So you didn't add any more watercolor than what we just saw, in terms of it
No,
just had a real basic
no,
color down
all,
as the base.
it's all pastel. But you can still see the dilations. You remember, if you would look back and think back on the last one, I said that there was variations, you know, in that thatch. Well, that's coming through even on the picture. So what you're doing with the pastel is enhancing. But when you see the last picture, or the next picture, which will come next week, I've even improved on that. So I've got even further than that. But it really is a lovely picture to do. I thoroughly enjoy myself.
It's nice to see this section over here on the right hand side be sort of partly done, so you can see that
Yeah.
that watercolor starting to sort of put the framework down for what you will be putting on top. Especially, I don't know if you can see where my cursor is, just sort of around here as well, the
Yes.
basics. And what will you do now with this section, or what did you do next with this section?
Well, if you look at the section immediately behind that, where you have the lilac-y colour and the green, that's had pastel on it. So I've already started the ball rolling there with putting pastel on. But you've got to, again, you see, you've got to have a framework. And what I did with those watercolor colours there, I put a framework in, ready for when I put the pastel. I mean, I know what I'm going to be doing. You see what I mean? I've got the benefit of that. I know, and having done it before, I know that I can't overdo the watercolor. If I did, I wouldn't be able to get the pastel on. In other words, all those light areas you see has to stay light. You can't then make them dark. You would never get them dark enough. And in the dark areas, just above that white rail that's going in, it won't be white when I put it in. Eventually, you'll see a slight difference. But just above there, you'll see it's dark. and I can't make that light again. See what I mean? You have to follow what you've already suggested. It's quite a lot.
Laura has a question for us on YouTube, and Laura asks, is it watercolor paint that you've used, or do you make a wash from pastel?
No. Well, you could actually. That's a very good question. You could, but I wouldn't bother with that. There's no point. If you've got watercolors, and you wouldn't have to be a particularly good watercolor artist to be able to do this either. You can rely really on the pastel to do the work for you, especially if you're used to pastel pencils. But the watercolor is a good foundation for you, because what you've got when you start putting the pastel on, you've already got that. When I do the pastel pencil pictures, I say you put a base color in. You always put the base color, and the same idea again. You put that in. If I was using pastel here, I'd put those colors more or less as you see them there, and in pastel, and then I would enhance it with the stronger colors. So it's the same idea, but with watercolor, you've got that added advantage, really, of being able to set the scene. I think that's the best way I can describe it.
Lovely. Thanks, Laura. It's a good question. Have you got your set there, Dad, that you use? Can you just show the camera?
Yes, I have. I've got all my brushes as well here. There's my brushes.
For those that are interested in what
all my brushes. Can you see that? I put them in the middle of the.
No, you're over this side. There you go.
I've got it now. I'm getting used to it now. Those are all my brushes. Quite a few, as you see, and I've probably used all of them. Generally, and there's one missing. No, there's not. That one. There you are. I've found it out there.
Can't see it. Can't see it.
Can't see it over there.
There you go. Yeah.
Well, that's the one I use when I'm washing. I'll only use that for the wash, though. That's only when I do the sky, basically, that one. So that one's a sky one. That's done. And that's upside down. Now, these are the other ones. These very fine brushes, that one, I don't use that very much.
Can't see it. Bit more over. That's it.
Am I right?
Yeah, that's it.
That's better, isn't it? You can see it. You can't see me now, I expect, but you can see that. That's the fine one. I wouldn't use that very much, because that one is just for the very, very fine detail. Okay, that one. The one I use mainly, I think, probably is this one. This would be probably a number 4. This one here. Can you see that one all right?
Mm-hmm.
Really? Okay, well, that's number 4. This is a number 6. That's a very good one for washing. I'd use that for my washes. Well, that and that, those two, I would use for my washes. The others, this one is a really good brush for all the windows and putting in the detail. That's a fine one. I wouldn't use that very much, but that, although it there, move it my finger, it will come to a point eventually, or sort of a point. I'll make it into a point anyway. That one is finer. That one is probably the better one to use, but I've got them anyway. I like to have a set of brushes. Anyway, and each one has got their own particular job. So that's what, and the set. Well, my set. Have a look at my. I'm hoping I'm going to put this in the right position for you. Am I putting it? You can't see me now. But
Yeah.
Well, that's the set I use. It's a bigger set, as you can see, and I need that. And it looks very mucky, doesn't it? That's deliberate. I deliberately make it mucky because, especially if I can take this off, this one for you, I can show you better. Now that one, that there, the green, is a mixture of a sap green, lemon yellow, ochre, a tiny bit of black in there, but you can't really see it to make it darker. So that's my latest palette. That's what did these pictures you see there. You know, the wash.
Love it.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, nice to see. Definitely, it's lovely to see. Now, you sent me this picture, which obviously is looking amazing, but you sent me two other smaller pictures of this that you wanted to hone in on, which I can do. But why did you send these to me, and which one shall I show first?
Well, first of all, can you hone in between the two chimney pots on the left-hand side to the left of the church? Hone in on that first of all, as close as you can. Closer. That's it. Okay, now look at that. See that little, what looks like a bird in there?
This bit.
That's it. That wasn't on the picture. That's a bit of fluff. I don't know where it came from, but it's a bit of fluff from the photography. Okay. Now, why have I showed you that? Well, or pointed that out to you? Well, very important, because when I looked at that, I thought, oh dear, I saw it on my camera. I thought, where'd that come from? I looked at my picture and saw it on my actual picture. Blew it away, disappeared. But then I thought, do you know, that looked like a bird. Hey, that's an idea. Why don't I put some birds in?
So then this is what you sent me. Excellent. I know what's coming, you see.
There you go. Now, they're not bits of fluff. That is actual watercolor. And I thought, how nice that would be just to put them in. Now, you look at that and you think, why do you put the birds where they are? Why not in the middle of the picture or up in the sky? The reason is you don't want to make them too obvious. They're kind of a little bit of a, what can I say, a little bit extra. But I thought that was a perfect place for them. Now, if I hadn't put that bit of fluff there, or that I hadn't seen that bit of fluff, I wouldn't have put the birds in.
Interesting. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. So the fluff went, but you used it as inspiration to add birds in.
Where that went, it was just, I don't know what it was. I don't know. I don't know what it was in paint. It wasn't wet. It was just a piece of fluff that I got there.
Brilliant.
Anyway, there you go.
And there was another picture that you sent me.
Mm-hmm. Can you say go back to the original picture again, and we can set the scene?
Yes, absolutely. Of course. Where was I? This one.
That's it. Now go back to now. What you want to do is hone in on the right-hand side of that bridge. That's it. Keep going. That's it. Okay, that'll do fine. Now this is watercolor. This is the watercolor we were talking about. Watercolor wash that I put in. And when I was looking at that, and I thought, hey, you know, that bit. You'd have to come a little bit closer so I can show you a little bit clearer than that. You know the bit I'm talking about. That's it better. You see that bit on the right side of the bridge? A blob, really. It's there. No, above that. Just go. That's it. You got it.
This bit.
Now, if you look at that and you look at that closely, in through my eyes particularly, you think, I wonder what that reminds me of, maybe a wall. And it actually lined up exactly with the porch area of the building to the right of that. And I thought, why can't I make that, instead of making it part of the bush of the tree, you see that porch there? It kind of lined up with it. I thought maybe it could be used as a bit of a wall. It's something that out nothing. It wasn't intended of that. It was just a flick of the paintbrush. But this is what I did with it.
I don't know which one I'm looking at now. I think it's this one. Is this?
That's it. That's it. Now it's a wall. When you look at it, you think, well, is that important? Not really. I think you could say that that's an artist's prerogative, really. You look at that, you think, that looks like a wall. I'll turn it into a wall.
You've got to have the confidence to pull that off, though.
Yes, true. But I could have done anything. I could have just increased the foliage in that area. But I thought, why not do that? I think you can indulge yourself sometimes in these things, and I've done that with the later picture, which you'll see next week. I've done that again. Not I haven't put any more walls in like that, but I've looked at the pictures and I thought, I can do this and I can do that. So I put curtains in the window. Yeah, let's put some curtains in the window. Totally different to what Quinton originally put. And it, although it bears a resemblance to Quinton's, it's not going to look exactly the same. You don't want it to.
You're making it your own, aren't you? And these are fairly low stakes changes. You know, you're not drastically moving the bridge or removing a house. You know, these are low stakes. You know, adding birds and these little wall details and stuff and curtains is not. It's not going to change the whole picture too much.
No, it's fun. I mean, I've said many, many times what you should do with your pictures when you're doing them, whatever subject you're using, you should enjoy yourself. It should be fun. And I have a lot of fun when I'm doing this. And I decide what, I mean, when you think of the pleasure you get in making things up, developing your own little extras like I've done there. And I do that in all my watercolors. I do that. I don't just copy what I see. I look at what I see and think, well, how can I reinterpret that? One of the things you look at there too, and if you look at the road, you see, I said that was going uphill, didn't I? Going uphill. Well, it is, but I wanted to make it just a little bit more than just a road. So what I've done, as you'll see next week, I put some tracks in. Now, bear in mind, this is a picture where there wasn't any cars around at that time. This was around, I would think he based this picture around late 1800s. I mean, I know there are cars around, but probably not around this area. So there were carts. And I thought, let's put a few cart tracks in there. See what I mean? But it's not there, and it wasn't on the original picture. So you can see how you can set your imagination at work. But the thing is, I've got to have the cart track going around the corner. You can't just have it go straight up, can it?
Oh yeah, of course.
So you have to think that too. You have to think how you have to paint your own picture. Literally paint your own picture.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to bring the full view back again, even though it's hasn't got those couple of changes that people have just seen on the smaller version, but I thought I'd just bring it back just so that people get another full view of it. It's looking magical, and you can definitely tell that there's something different about this approach, about comparing it to your other pictures. You can really tell there's a depth to it, a warmth to it. It's you could definitely tell that there's something more with this one, and obviously that's the watercolor and the pastel together. It's a really lovely effect, and it is coming off brilliantly. So
and if you look at the building that we've got there on the left hand side, the difficulty you've got with something like that, look how big it is, look how much, it's almost a third of the picture across, isn't it? It's quite a lot of, so you've got to do something a bit special with that. You can't just, well, you could just blonk in the windows and the door, and that's it. But I can't do that. So I've got to invent things, and you'll see next week things I've invented. But I've started the ball rolling with the wash. Do you remember I said when we were looking at the thatch, I said I was putting dilations in different tones. You can see that there in that, can't you? It's not just a wash. It's got different tones in it. Subtle though they might be, they're there. That helps me when I come to use the pastel pencils.
So interesting, because I was looking at that and then I thought, well, how different is that color? And then I looked to the bridge and I saw the pastel mat showing through and thinking, oh my gosh, that is actually quite a tone that you've added to it. Almost like a sepia-esque kind of like tone.
That's right.
And you can really, it's so impressive. It really gives you such a unique base color to work from.
Well, you have to have that kind of imagination, really. That colour that you see there is not the colour of the house. It's going to be an ivory yellowy colour, which suits the colour of the original Winton picture. How do you change it? How do you do that? Pastel pencils, the magic of them, that can create that. But you have to have that as a background. If you don't have that in the background, if I put the yellows and the ivory on, it would be too bright.
So interesting. So interesting. It's looking fantastic. Before we sign off, I'm just going to read a few comments that have come through. Carolyn on Facebook says, artistic license, and that's exactly what you're doing here when you're making these little tweaks and changes and additions. Laura continues to say on YouTube, this approach is gorgeous. I really like the depth and vibrancy. I'm going to try mixing watercolor and pastels now. The birds are a great use of detail. It's just the feedback is looking great, and obviously for those that are interested in learning this picture, it will be a course on our website. You're filming it so people can actually see in real time how you're doing this picture, and not just hearing us talk about it every week. But I'm looking forward to seeing the next phase next week, as I'm sure everyone else is. So be sure to tune in live if you can. Oh, Jackie's just joined. Brilliant. Hi from Ireland. Hi, Jackie. How you doing? Hope everyone's having a lovely evening. We're actually about to sign off for this week, but we'll do another live broadcast next week. If you have tuned in halfway through, then the replay will be over as soon as we've hit the stop button. You'll be able to go back to the beginning and watch it, and you can find all of our previous episodes on YouTube and on Facebook. And if you want to learn from Dad and see how he does any of his pictures, then go over to our website, colinbradleyart.com, and you can indulge yourself in well over 500 classes now through pastel, mostly pastel, but there are some watercolor, colored pencil, pan pastel as well. Lovely. Thank you, Dad. Good episode, good podcast, and good to see the progress, and we look forward to seeing more next week. But for now, that's it for this week. Thank you everyone for watching and for listening. I'm Stephen Bradley.
And I'm Colin Bradley.
Enjoy your week.